Bueno, pues muy bienvenidos, buen día, buenos días. Empezamos el último día de sesiones de Speakers Corner en esta edición de ArtsLibris con una presencia insólita que nos tiene muy contentos, que nos ha costado un poco de trabajo conseguir, pero lo hemos logrado. Este año tenemos por primera vez un editor islandés en ArtsLibris y han tenido la amabilidad de ofrecerse a explicarnos cosas sobre la tradición del libro de artista en Islandia, que aparentemente podría no ser grande, pero de hecho lo es mucho más fuerte de lo que uno pensaría desde esta distancia. Silja Pálmarsdóttir está con nosotros y establecerá una conversación con Víctor Hannesson. Hablarán en inglés, pero Silja habla castellano. Si tenéis cualquier problema de interpretación o queréis preguntar o lo que sea, ella estará encantada de ayudaros. Espero que lo paséis muy bien. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos.
Gracias a ti, Mela. So I will start to talk, and like Mela said, this talk will be in English. I hope everything it's good with the sound. Everybody can hear well. So I'm Silja Pálmarsdóttir, and we will talk about Dieter Roth here today and his relation with Iceland. And with Victor, later on, I will talk about the tradition of artist books in Iceland. And Victor is from the editorial Dulkápan, that is presenting Iceland this year, here in ArtsLibris. And we are very happy to be here with you today. So let's go to our subject, Dieter Roth. He was known for his many different art forms, but we will concentrate here on his contribution on artist books. I will describe briefly what I mean with an artist book. So artist book is when we have artworks inside the book, or the book is artwork itself. In Icelandic it is called bókverk, and in English sometimes it is called bookworks. So Dieter was also known for other types of art, as installations, poetry. He did a lot of music, and of course his graphic art and artist books is the ones that are most known. When someone tries to, I think this is better. When someone tries to search for the artist book in internet, his name pops very easily up, Dieter Roth. And let's start. I'll tell you a little bit about where he was born. He was born in the year 1930 in Hanover, Germany. And his mother was German and his father was from Switzerland. Maybe it's better that I have this one. Is it good? Okay. So he went to Switzerland in the year 1943. Where he went to live with his relatives during the Second World War, and he stayed a lot during his lifetime in Switzerland. But as me and Victor are here presenting Dieter Roth and his relation to Iceland, I'm going to go back to the year 1955, when Dieter Roth was working in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And he met his wife there, an Icelandic woman, Sigríður Björnsdóttir, and he moved with her to Iceland in 1957. So he found himself in this island there, very up in the north, and we can say that Dieter Roth struggled quite a lot at the beginning, as it was hard for him to find a job when he first came to Iceland. And to present his art. So, but during time he got to know quite a lot of artists there, and as one of his friends said, the printers that were working in Iceland showed a great appreciation of Dieter Roth, and he quickly was able to go and print in their studios and yes, do a lot of projects on his own. If we think a little bit about the origin of artist books, it is often said that it goes back to the Futurismo, the movement, artistic movement in Italy in 1910 to 1940. So we can think about that Dieter Roth was probably influenced then of other movements later on, that is Dadaismo and Flux. And when we think about artist book, it is as we hold the book and we have a space inside. We have a space inside the book where many things can happen in there. And we can say it's probably not lesser than when we look at a painting, when the inspiration that the book, artist book, can give us. But yes, going back to Dieter, when he was in Iceland, like I was saying before, his far-headed ideas didn't fit very well at first in Iceland, and his curiosity of new things that were quite different from the traditional ones. But with his wife, he was able to find projects to do, mostly of design work. So doing cover of books, jewelry, furniture, and other things. Those work were often unpaid. So, and that was a huge difference from what he had seen in Denmark. He was working in a prestigious design house in Denmark, in Copenhagen, where the rhythm was very different and the design was already important in Denmark at that time. So coming in Iceland in 1957, he saw a very different reality over there. If you think about the art in Iceland, if I introduce a little bit how that was, our art history is very young. Our first oil painter, our pioneer in oil paintings, was born in the year 1885. So yes, our history in Iceland of art is quite young. We had our first National Art Museum only in the year 1987. And so Dieter Roth found this, this capital, Reykjavik, where he lived at first. He found it in a way that was a little bit like a small fisherman village, like we would think about it today, because even though we think about ourselves quite modern today in Reykjavik, in the capital, it always remains very simple and different from the other, the mainland of Europe. So Dieter, in his early years, and he started to have this editorial, forlagið is it called. He worked with his friend there, Icelandic artist and a poet, where they started in the year, it was in 1957. So it did not take Dieter a long time to start to publish artist book in Iceland. And Forlagið is the name of the publication house. So it has also their names in it, Forlagið ED. So Einar is the name of his co-worker and D for Dieter. Dieter manages everything to do with the publications, the printing of the books, and they managed to do this by being able to use other printing houses and use paper that had been thrown away from other printing houses. One of these books during these years is Kinderbuch. So I'm going to show you here some images of Kinderbuch. that is the name in German, but in English, children books. So here we see them. They are about 32 by 32 centimeters and 28 pages. And it is interesting. I read an interview with Dieter where he told when he was in Iceland, because this book was first published in Iceland. And when he went to promote the book with a friend of him, they didn't get any interest from the people, but only one person showed interest, appreciation of it, and it was an Icelandic architecture. And Dieter and his friend, to show how much they appreciated his interested in it, they gave him the book. So the only example that was someone showed interest was actually just given to the person. Then it didn't sell in Iceland, the book. They were made about 100 or 150 copies of it, but it never sold. So the only copies went out to friends, and probably a lot of them were lost during the time. But yes, I would like to put a more emphasis on how the printers in Iceland though found it curious to work with Dieter. And though it was hard for him to go on with his work, he always had an access to the publication houses in Iceland. And so there was no problem for him to keep on printing books, doing posters and other graphic works in Iceland. And when he went to the studios, he didn't find that they were not very interested in what he was doing, the printers, because they didn't really understand it. But they saw his great skills in printing. And another art book that I'm going to show you is Bilderbuch, that is also done in Iceland. And here we can see it better. It is curious with this book that you can take one page out of the book, and actually you only see the page really how it is while taking out the page of the book. So if you keep all the pages inside, they reflect each other, the pages. So this is kind of a characteristic of Dieter Roth's work, is that he really appreciated when people could create the art with him. So he often made it in a way that the books could be touched, that they could be played with, taking out the pages and looked at them. So this is one characteristic of Dieter, as we really see a good example in this book. Here is a map of Iceland, just to see a little bit where we are situated. We see Reykjavik here on our left, and this is where Dieter lived at first. He then went up to the west part of Iceland, that is called Snæfellsnes, Hellnar, and lived there, had his studio by the sea, a small cottage over there. So it was often that he created his art there. What I'm going to show you now is his place in Seyðisfjörður, that is on the east part of Iceland. So as you can see, it is a small village, and here we have a museum that is now very dedicated to the art of Dieter Roth. So the name is Skaftfell, the museum, and is actually having an exhibition this summer from June to September, showing the works of Dieter. So his heritage is very well alive still in Iceland. Dieter Roth passed away in the year 1998 in Switzerland, but his grave is in Iceland, so he still is there with us on the west coast in Iceland. And but I'm going to talk a little bit more about his books, as this is the concept that we are going to talk about today. His books, of course, were very curious, and he had this. He had this idea to put also different material in the books. So he worked with a meat factory in Iceland for a while, and he did a book that is called, how was the name? Wurst literature, that is sausage in German. So he put a meat from this meat factory inside the book. So the book was made of pages, meat, and glued together with spices. So this is one of the books that was created during his time in Iceland. And as we are talking about Seyðisfjörður, Victor, here we have his studio that he had in Seyðisfjörður. We can see inside the studio that is still, his family is still holding the studio the same as it was. And here I have actually one painting before I start to talk about artist books with Victor. This is an artist from Iceland. His artistic name is Erró, and he was a part of the French collage pop art. He has lived almost all his life in France, but we have a lot of his works in Iceland. And I started to think, because of course Dieter has influenced a lot Icelandic artists, and Erró is, if I remember right, he's born in 1955, and do you remember, is it, or maybe a little bit earlier, Erró? Probably earlier. He's now 86 years old, Erró, and so we can think about the influence that Dieter Roth, for example, had on artists like Erró in Iceland. That Dieter, as we know about his works, he cut up pieces from newspapers and the comics book and all the material that he could find in Iceland when he was working there, and put them together in books. So we have these books that show different cuts from newspapers that Dieter did during his lifetime. So what I was talking about the influence for other artists, Erró has made has gotten very famous in Iceland, and he did this. He took comic books or journals from different magazines, put them together as a collage, and started to paint them. So we have these oil paintings of Erró. This is not a relation that I know of has been confirmed, but it is an artist, Icelandic artist, that I thought about that probably had a great influence from Dieter Roth. And as we look a little bit more at the books of Dieter, here we have a book that he just called Book 3A. We see that there are not two O's in the book like in English book, because this is taken from the Icelandic language. That is Bók 3A, he called it. And these are newspaper clips from Icelandic journals. One thing that I forgot to tell you about, he during his years in Iceland, he did a book that is called Daily Mirror. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of it, but it was very small. It was only 2 by 2 centimeters, and he cut newspapers from England from the Daily Mirror newspaper. And he once said as a joke that he used this and cut it up because he never really believed in newspapers. He said that newspapers never really tell the truth. So Dieter was always with his humorism, and he was a very generous person. So he helped artists in Iceland, he promoted them abroad, and he was able to get them into museums abroad. So it was a great luck that Dieter lived in Iceland. He stayed there until 1961, when he divorced from his wife. But he always, all his life, he went often back to Iceland. He had 3 children, Icelandic children, that he worked also with. They are artists. So he collaborated with his children in Iceland and in Germany and in Switzerland. So we have this heritage that is very important in Iceland from Dieter Roth. Here we see inside one of the books that we actually have here on the table. It is curious also in this way how Dieter wants the viewer, the person that is holding the book, to be able to see his fantasies. He put these holes in the pages so you can see from one page to another. This is kind of his playing with these books. And here we see that one of the pages is put upside down. And book 3D is the name of these, and these are the 2 books that we have here with us today. But going a little bit back to Seyðisfjörður, as I know that Victor has been in Seyðisfjörður, and he met the director of the museum just some days ago when we were saying that we were going to have this little talk here today. Do you know a little bit how it was with Dieter in Seyðisfjörður? Was he well known of the people that lived there? Do you have any information of this?
Yes. Hi, my name is Victor. Dieter Roth, he was working a lot in Seyðisfjörður during his time, because, as you said, there is a studio there, and his sons and grandsons are still using that facilities, both for themselves, and they get guest artists to come and work with them. Seyðisfjörður is a really renowned cultural center in the east coast of Iceland, and Skaftfell is focusing on visual art a lot, and it started around 20 years ago with and the Dieter Roth family, they donated a really big piece of his work to the gallery, and in the gallery it's both a gallery and a bistro and guest apartments for artists in residencies. And I was there visiting family because I'm from the east, and so I've been always, connecting to that legacy of Seyðisfjörður. And I was really lucky to borrow a few of original copies that Dieter Roth made, the ones that you have up on the.
That we're looking at. And they also told us that they have about 60 books, artist books in Seyðisfjörður in their collection. They have about 60 artist books that can be found in the museum in Seyðisfjörður.
Yeah, that's the donation from Dieter Roth. So they have, and it's actually a really accessible archive. Usually you have those originals maybe locked under a glass table, but there's a bistro in the restaurant on the first floor of the gallery, and there's just a glass shelf there with a lot of artist books, both from Dieter Roth and also from other artists who have been coming, his friends and other people. So you can easily go and have a coffee or a beer in Seyðisfjörður and look through some of Dieter Roth's original works. And Yeah. I've been getting a lot of comments about like people think it's really strange to see an original copy of Dieter Roth's work here, but that's how it is back there.
Yes, Iceland is always quite liberal, and it's a small country, but it has a lot of cultural heritage, and they were also telling me in the art museum in Reykjavik, they have about 150 books, artist books of Dieter in their possession. So if somebody has the chance to go to Iceland, it's a really good opportunity to be able to see some of the books. Of course, they are not always in an exhibition or show, but I'm quite sure that the people there in the Art Museum of Reykjavik, that is called the Living Art Museum in Reykjavik, is able to show some of the books if someone shows interest in it.
Yeah, and also if you come to the table of our small collective, you can come and have a look at the books.
Yes.
So yeah, please do.
Mm-hmm. And I was also curious because Victor is coming here from the editorial Dulkápan. Dulkápan is the name in Icelandic. The English name would be Hidden Books. So I was thinking about, it started about 6 years ago or more?
No, not so much, I think.
No.
3 or 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
there was a group of people who started to show interest. They wanted to make a small collective, both in making their own art books, but also there was a big interest in making a digital archive of Icelandic art books. So 2 of the founders, they got a small grant to start up a website where the goal is to archive all of Icelandic art books or book works, both from contemporary artists and before. So it's a matter of cooperation with the museums and also with individual artists.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that it's both a platform for looking at pieces of art that are in archives in museums, but also for contemporary artists to represent their work. There's contact information about people who are making books right now. You can buy, if you want, you can buy books
online, or
it will go there soon. But you can see information, contact information with people from all around. And I have a small example of Icelandic art books with me, so you can feel welcome to come and take a look.
Mm-hmm. And I really like to thank Victor for coming here to Barcelona to take a part with us in ArtsLibris this year, and of course ArtsLibris to make it able for Iceland to be a part of ArtsLibris. It's the first year that we are here presenting Iceland, and it is a curious thing with Iceland because we have this national park that has both the North American tectonic plate that has an encounter with the Eurasian tectonic plate. So we have these two lands meeting each other. So this is, as ArtsLibris has done a very great job on promoting Barcelona and other parts of Spain, of Italy, France, Germany. So we are very, very happy that we are here with you this year, and hopefully that will keep on going in the next years. I would like to. Were you going to?
There's also a lot of people here from South America, so
of
it's
course,
also like
exactly.
the Latin America connection. So we could see ourselves as the hub between, maybe.
We hope that exactly. And I think I'm going to end this small talk on telling you a little bit from a text that one of his friends wrote, Icelandic friend of him. As Dieter very often went on an excursion with a car on the whole island of Iceland. And he once wrote his friend when he was recalling memories with Dieter Roth during these years after he passed away in the year 1998. And he said, Dieter also painted the nature in Iceland. And this is something that I shouldn't say to anyone, said his friend, because it was supposed to stay between them as they were going on a road on the west part of Iceland. So they were up here in the west part, where we see that is written Hellnar, that is up on the west coast. And he said, when we finally reached Hellnar, where his house, the house of Dieter Roth, was on the edge of the sea, he confided to me something that he confirmed with examples, that he had started to paint landscape pictures in Iceland. And this, of course, I should never tell. Forgive me, old friend, once again. And that was his friend that writes this in a memory of Dieter Roth. So I think we are going to end this small talk here today. And I think we have one more talk coming after this one. And I really am thankful for having you here today. If there are some questions in English or even in Castellano, I can answer in English or in Castellano as it is more comfortable. Did anyone know about the relation with the Dieter Roth relation with Iceland before coming to this? No. Mm-hmm. It is not very well known, but it is curious because he stayed there for 6 years, and then until he passed away in 1908, he always came back to Iceland during these years. And as we were talking about before, we have the museum in Seyðisfjörður on the east part of Iceland that is very dedicated in his art. And they are actually now building a studio. They are, how can I say, that is going to show his works all the year around, and that will open this summer. So that is a very positive thing. That how many things are happening over there still. So if there are not any questions. And then I say a very big thank you to you all, and I hope you enjoy your day and seeing ArtsLibris. And I hope one day you will maybe be able to go to Iceland and see the museum in the east part of the island. And yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.